was talking to my friend Bruce Rayner, and I said I just came off the set at 6:30, just about 6 o'clock with my makeup on. But after reading the article by Seth Wessler, I knew there was no other place that I had to be here but this moment to introduce him. What happens to American children if their parents are deported from the U.S.? That's a question that Seth Wessler tried to answer in his groundbreaking investigation for coloredline.com and the Applied Research Center. What he discovered was a story of heartbreak for thousands of children who are slipping through the cracks, forgotten byproducts of today's immigration battles. Between January and June of 2011 alone, the United States deported 46,000 parents with young children who are U.S. citizens. And while their parents languish in immigration detention, over 5,100 children were stuck in foster care limbo, sometimes never to see their parents again. Imagine what it would be like to be one of those parents, to be one of those children. The investigation is a rebuke of the immigration policies of the Obama administration and a call to action. Seth is an investigative reporter who has written extensively about immigration, the criminal justice system, and our frayed social safety network. He works at His work at Colorline follows that site's motto of covering race intolerance from the perspective of community rather than through the lens of power. Please join me in congratulating Seth Wessler for the 2012 Hillman Prize for Web Journalism.
It's an extraordinary honor to be here to have that introduction. I want to thank the judges and the Hillman Foundation. I'm plainly sort of overwhelmed by the company of the other winners and past winners of this prize. I spent a lot of time last year in small, dark rooms in states like Texas and Arizona and Florida, in the basements of child welfare offices and in immigration detention centers. And I'd gone to test this claim that the federal government has, that when it decides to deport a parent, that it will let that parent decide what happens to their kid. It's a claim that immigrant communities had long known wasn't true, but there was no proof. In a concrete room in the Eloy Detention Center in Arizona, a slight, soft-spoken Mexican woman told me that she'd not seen or spoken with her children for over 4 months. Her story started when she was pulled over by Maricopa County police officers for drunken driving and arrested. And she figured she'd get out of jail fast and she'd return to her kids. Her children were placed quickly in temporary foster care. And that's probably what would have happened had she been a citizen, but she's not. She's an undocumented immigrant who'd lived in the United States for 15 years. And so instead, the federal government told the local jail to hold her there until they could come and pick her up. And they came and picked her up, and they moved her to Eloy. And her children remained in foster care. She was severed entirely from the court processes that started at that point, determining what would happen to her family. And she lost contact with her children. My interviews with foster care caseworkers and reviews of piles of documents from cases, child welfare departments, once parents are deported, often refuse to even consider to reunify children with their parents in other countries, operating under this logic that's reminiscent of generations of logics in child welfare that involve racial and cultural chauvinism, that say children simply can't be better off with those people. Children will be better off in foster care with strangers here. My parents, Steve Wessler and Ellen Fried, are here, and during every interview that I want to thank them for being models to me, but I also want to say that during every interview I did with parents in detention centers, I thought about them, and I thought about how lucky we are to have a family that was able to make decisions and configure our lives as we chose. The parents I met were not afforded this. They're jettisoned first into these jails and then over borders. And once they're gone, deportees' stories have a way of evaporating. Colorlines.com, where I work, is committed to gathering these traces, to foregrounding the stories of the people who are most ignored, and to investigating the ways that our institutions, even if often without meaning to, perpetuate racial inequality and harm. Quickly, this investigation would not have been possible without the remarkably steadfast vision of Rinku Sen, the executive director of the Applied Research Center and Colorlines. And the investigation took nearly a year to complete, and it couldn't have happened without the work of Dom Apollon, the research director at ARC, and Esther Portillo-Gonzalez, a research fellow. Nor could it have happened, and nor could the follow-up stories that I've written since this original one have come out happen without Kai Wright, Colorline's editor. The last time I was able to get information about the woman I told you about at the beginning of this was in January. She'd been deported, and her children remained in foster care. She hadn't heard from them, and from what I can tell, they're moving quite rapidly to be adopted by the foster families that they were placed with soon after her deportation. Our immigration laws and policies treat immigrants like they are unattached intruders, not as people with communities and children. And so as long as that's true, the collateral impacts of this massive and expanding immigration enforcement system will continue to grow. I believe it's the work of investigative journalism to uncover these hidden consequences so that we can understand what's happening in our names. Thank you very much.